coming out this evening to listen to our speakers, Ashley, Tedham, and Dr. Jacqueline Musabende. So can we put our hands together for the speakers again? So as is our custom, after such a fantastic, few minutes of learning and all that information, we like to ask a couple of questions just so that we're sure we're really taking something away in terms of our own personal burning questions. And so I've got a few questions here that we're going to see if we can pull some answers out of our speakers this evening. My direct questions to either of you, but if you do want to add something, even though it's to Dr. Jacqueline or to yourself, feel free to add. The more the merrier. Yeah, so again, thank you so much for very, very insightful teaching. I find that one of the best ways to teach people is from experience. Many times you save people the hassle of having to go through those hurdles, that are definitely avoidable. So just to kick off our question this evening, there's a very popular conversation about passion and purpose, right? And many times when you hear people speak about these two concepts, what you hear is people say, purpose must be priority, because it's when you're working with purpose that you know that you're really kind of making the impact that you want. But there's also the argument for passion, right? Because it's only something you're passionate about that you're able to sustain. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that. Where should a person want to focus more attention? Where exactly is where we should be leaning more towards? Ashley, you can start the question.
Yeah, I think this is actually something that I've personally struggled with a lot because, I think some people know what their passion is right away, and I think for me personally, it took a long time to figure it out. There was things I loved, but I was never really clear on what I really wanted to do. And I remember even my father said, "You must go to university. I don't care what you take, but you must go to university." And I was like, "No, I don't know." And I remember he enrolled me in university and put me in all economics courses because he was like a financial guy. So he put me in all financial courses and economics, and then I unrolled myself from all of those and chose like just a mix of all sorts of different things, which ultimately I think was the right thing because I really just needed to start exploring. I started, my first 2 years of university were general studies until they literally called me and said, "You can't get a degree in general studies, you have to pick something." And it was only after a couple of years that I was like even still really struggling with I don't even know what I'm good at or what I really there's a lot of things I like, but nothing that I'm passionate about. And that's hard because I think especially young people, they're just follow your passion and that drive and be successful. But if you don't know which direction you're headed, you just feel like you're wandering aimlessly and you feel really lost. And I felt really lost for a long time. And that's why I think in my personal experience, those connections and that constant searching for hints and lessons and almost testing the world around me, do I like this or do I like that? I've had millions, well, not millions, I'm not that old, but a lot of different jobs. And I started in different directions and then backed up and went the other way. And, so I think the UN is one of those, right? Where I thought I was passionate about that. And then I realized I wasn't. And I think that's why I say your passion and your purpose can evolve and change, and it will likely for some of us more than others. I still don't have one thing I'm passionate about. I am passionate about feeling like I have purpose. And that could be a variety of things, because I feel like even though I was at the UN, when I was at the UN or when I was working at the Duke of Edinburgh Award, I wasn't passionate about those things necessarily, but I felt I had purpose, and that is what I was passionate about. You know, I am meant to be here to do something, to learn something, to give something. And even though I didn't know what that was, it's just a state of being. And like you were saying about your state of mind, like, okay, I know this isn't everything I want, but there's lessons to be learned here and things to build on. And so that's a very long answer, but I think it is something that each individual have to wrestle with, because I think some people, and I know people, you know, I have friends that were passionate about medicine since university, and like they were passionate about becoming a doctor, and that was clear to them. For some of us, it's not, and I think sometimes that's even harder because you just feel like you're flapping out there in the wind. You know? Anyway, that's my answer.
Dr. Jacqueline, want to take a stab at question?
Yeah, thank you so much. For me, I'm kind of a passionate person from whatever I wanted to do. But I think as I grow up, I am obsessed with problem solving. That's why every time I'm going to do something, for me, it's just like, oh my God, I can't sleep before I do that. I don't remember, there's something actually. When I was going to school, like high school, there's something I'm very bad at, drawing. I'm horrible at drawing, which is sad because my dad and my younger brothers, they are very good. So even with that, it was not boring in a classroom. I would try, get to just say an F or a D, so, but really very bad. However, everything I do, I always do with passion. And then people will ask me, how? Because I choose. But when I say that, I wanted to bring you back in my childhood, where going to school, to university, I didn't choose, actually. So you pass the exam, they orient you somewhere. For example, I didn't have the time to say, oh, am I going to do accounting or IT or something else? There was no choice like that. You're happy, lucky, you are going to school. You go there and do that. Now, I always try to understand how I went from not having a choice to establish a situation where now I do what I want. I can choose what I wanted to do. I have so many projects, and I'm passionate about my project, all of them, because I choose them. But again, as I try to understand where this is coming from, it's really, I am obsessed with problem solving. So like we're sitting here in this room, I can tell you that I have like 10 projects just by sitting in this room. This can be done this way, this can be done, this can be done. And as I'm doing that, if I start those projects, I'm just passionate about it. Because I see where I come from, I said, I can design really the solution, and I want it to go there. So for me, it's like, now if you ask me, what is the purpose, the purpose in life, actually? Actually, it's really still the same thing. I want just to resolve this problem. I wanted to fix this thing. And sometimes it's surprising because when I talk to people, I have a PhD, I teach, but I'm a very practical person. I wanted to hear about the theories and the stuff, but for me, if you can't implement that, you're wasting my time, or I'm wasting your time. So that's how kind of I established in my life that I have things I'm doing, things I'm working on, they are practical. I can see the results of those things. That's how I combine somehow my purpose and the passion. So when I was young, I had this dream of having like a PhD. I didn't even know what it was, but just feeling like, oh, you are a doctor, you know. I just had it in my mind, like, that's also probably was driving my way of going to school, being successful. I finished a bachelor degree, got a good job, but I thought I could feel always that there was something missing. Then I will go on to do my master's degree, have a good job. No, there's something missing until I just finished my PhD. And when I was doing my PhD, I was also working, I had a job. So kind of I didn't have a time to do my thesis or working on my dissertation or really being involved in my PhD as I wanted. I quit my job. Very good job. I quit, say, no. I have to finish my PhD. Then I will go back to industry and finding a job. So that's how kind of I live a life of where, for me, it's like a mix of things. I have a purpose. I have something I wanted to do in my life, where I wanted to go, and then.
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys have taken the long route, but like if I were to summarize your answers, you're basically saying that even when you find something to do, it's your responsibility to build passion for that thing, right? So many times you're saying inadvertently that you might find something that you should be doing, but so there's a possibility that you might not be passionate about that thing. So you need to build passion in it. So is that what you're saying? Because it does sound like that. Because for instance, one of the things you mentioned about the UN was at a point it was very difficult for you, and even while you stayed there, you had to sustain passion until you realized, you know what, I can do my purpose somewhere else, and so you left. Same thing with Dr. Jacqueline, who is saying that, you know, her purpose is to find practical solutions to things, you know, and so that's where passion comes in. This is what you're supposed to be doing, and then, you know, you can now as well build passion by the way you're implementing that thing, how you're seeing the results come forward, the solution is producing. So there's something I'm getting from your responses, that you can't quite, there is no start and there is no end between these two concepts. I don't know if you're understanding me, Ashley.
Yeah.
It does, except I understood you wrong. But yeah.
No, totally. I would agree with that, except I would say, in my case, I definitely couldn't fake passion. So it definitely had to come from like a really like a visceral place for me. Like I would even say at the UN, I really did not have a passion. And maybe because I felt I didn't have purpose, actually, because I didn't feel like I was able to contribute in any sort of meaningful way, in the way that I felt was meaningful, right? And so, interestingly enough, and I think this kind of speaks to what you were saying, is, you know, when I was at the UN, I found myself actually doing other things that I was passionate about.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I wasn't passionate about my work there.
Exactly.
And I was distracted and constantly, you know, trying to figure out what else I could do. Like, I mean, I remember thinking at one point working for the UN that I wanted to like be a fitness instructor. Like that's how all over I was all over the place. Or like wellness instructor, because I was just wanted people to be well, and like, I don't know, it was just this constant wrestling. It was not clear. But for me, it's less about producing something. And this is like also a personality thing, because when you're like, you're very logical, I'm very illogical. Like there's nothing logical about me. For me, it is really like, I am that classic, like it's about the feeling of it. Like the everything, I could do anything as long as I feel like that I am passionate about my purpose in that place, I could do it. And it doesn't even matter if anything comes of it, because I'm always thinking about, well, I never really know what comes of it, because a lot of our own interactions, like we don't know, you know, how our interaction with each other impacts somebody or doesn't, and so anyway, this is another long way around to answer it, but I think for me it's a little bit different. It really was, it's a feeling more than a product.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how different we all are, right? So, yeah, we're so different. Personally, I find that if I do get engaged in anything, I consider it almost my duty to bring passion to the project. You know, so I feel like my purpose is just doing everything well. You know, so some people are like that, who just can't do anything half-baked or be mediocre at anything. You just feel like you almost need to stamp something with the way you perform, right? So, like, I mean, it's just among the three of us here, we're all so different in the way we kind of consider that. So, Ashley, one of the things you mentioned when you were speaking is that for you to discover purpose wasn't something that you did on your own. So you were literally just with a friend of yours who pointed you in the direction of what has led you to here. So in our quest for purpose, it's not really about the things that we're doing now or where we are. So are you saying that one of the ways that we should approach it is to be completely open-minded? Like, it can be anything, it can come from anyone, versus the things that we already are engaged in. Because you mentioned you were already in school, you had already finished, I think, your first degree, and there was your friend who pointed you in the direction of what you didn't even know you had an interest in doing. You know, so tell us about that, please.
Yeah, and I think, like, it goes back to how different our experience is, because what really struck me listening to you was, you know, how you know, my perspective was, you know, the world is conspiring in your favor, and you just kind of have to show up, and when you got up and you said, well, this is the complete opposite of my experience, and it struck me as like, wow, that is a really important aha moment, because I do think that a lot of our experience is based on our position of privilege. You know, I had the luxury of, you know, I was born and raised here to a middle-class family, middle upper class family, and I had the opportunities that a lot of people didn't have and don't have. You know, I was sent to Paris on an exchange in high school. That is not normal. And I think it's important to recognize those things, as I had the luxury in many ways in my life to wander aimlessly and to have the freedom which I wish for every young person to really explore. And not everybody has the same kind of space and opportunity. I think that's why I'm so passionate about creating opportunity, and this is something we share, definitely, is giving back and helping that person, you know, your 20-year-old self, get where you are, or at least save them a few detours, you know, and I think that's a really, really important thing, is, you know, to call that out, because for me, in lots of ways, I feel like my passion and my purpose has been gifted to me, you know, like, it doesn't mean that I haven't worked very hard, but I think when you're given opportunity, no matter what the opportunity is, this is the big picture, is it doesn't matter, yes, I came from a privileged position, but I think the lesson is, when you're given any opportunity, you show up. Yeah. You show up and you give it your all, because I could have been given all of these opportunities and squandered them, right? And I think that's the lesson too, is whatever you do, bring your best self, because you could be, I remember a youth pastor once saying to me, if your summer job is like to paint a house, you know, you're painting a house in the summer, then you be the best freaking painter that they've ever seen, because you don't know who's watching, right? And you don't know what that's going to teach you, right? And or where it's going to take you, exactly. And I think where I am now is not just because I was given a golden ticket, but because people saw things in me, and I saw things along the way that were like, wait a minute, this is really cool, I could do this, and leaning into those things. For me, it was a very hard, like, I mean, it was logical but illogical. It was a hard place, you know? for me, it was logical because I was following my heart, my gut. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Jacqueline, you're speaking about success, carving your own pathway to success. And fantastic open line was where you said that, success starts with our mindset. And we often hear that actually, that there's a mindset that really takes a person to the levels that they've dreamt about, right? So, and from there comes, all the hard work, the effort, the responsibility, where you know that you have a part to play in achieving the goals that you're thinking about, right? But there's also something that struck me, again, as you spoke, and that was the fact that you were saying, we all have our different definitions of success. And you mentioned that, to a woman, to a certain woman, it could be to marry a rich man, to acquire all these material things, to be able to be, glamorous, boastful. And then, again, if you think of the fact that Ashley here, or yourself, were award winners in this city, doesn't it tell you to an extent that success isn't really just what we think it is, but there's an expectation from society of what success should look like. Otherwise people wouldn't be able to gauge another person's effort and say, to my mind, this person has succeeded. So how do you kind of balance those two, outcomes in terms of how you're approaching it? You're saying it has to be your mindset and we set our own standards for success, but still, a person who has married a wealthy man isn't successful to many of us. But a person who accomplishes things that elevates a community is in many people's eyes a success. So that there should be some kind of, imbalance, or I want to say, so I mean, you can speak to this.
Yeah, that's very good, really, point. So I'm going to bring you back to, let's say, in Africa. So in Africa, developing countries, all of them. You have a family, they're poor, they have nothing going on, but they're dreaming of, getting out of poverty, because we are looking at that. That in the past, when you look at the history, if you're a daughter, you're lucky, she's marrying a man who has good life. Well, for the family of this woman, they are successful and their daughter is successful. And in the eyes of the society, yes, you are successful because you are well married, as they say, and you will probably help your family and everybody else. So they say in the past, that's how things used it to be. So that's success. The daughters who were not able to find a good husband, they are not successful. And their families are not successful when we measure the success by how your children, your daughters are married. And when I say that, it's not only in developing countries. I remember in France, they used to tell me the same thing. For example, parents, if you have daughters, the things being very different. Because in Africa, in some societies, men will pay dowry, But in France, for example, the family of the woman has to pay the family of the man. And then they will organize all this ball you hear about good societies. Even when you look in the movies, it's about that, finding a good husband to their daughters of the families. That's a success defined in this moment by this society. And if you are in position of finding your daughters good husbands, yes, you're successful. And exactly what you said.
Right. So success really is determined by society. And that changes as, you go across societies, right? So
yes,
yeah.
Somehow. Now, even if you look at the history, the problem most of the time these women will have, yes, you are married to the man your parents want, but you are not happy. Maybe everybody else thinks you are successful, but you have heartbroken. For you, maybe, depending on how you define your success. Because if I define my success as making my mother happy, my family happy, giving them a place in the society, and in my mind, that's what I wanted to do. Well, guess what? If I get there, I'm successful. But we have to remember that even in these ancient societies, there are some women. Everybody's screaming, happy that you are successful, but you are not. You are not happy. You are just pleasing people, or you are just respecting the society expectations.
Excellent, thank you. That really kind of ties it together, right? So the mindset, there should be some correlation, between that thing we think is success and how we manifest it in the society, not by the standards, so to speak, right? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Sounds good. My next question is something else you mentioned. You were speaking about how success needs a village, and so, but how do you pick this village? Because, many times there's people who you come to and ask them, and you share ideas with them, dreams you've had, and you're saying to them, so I have this thing I really want to accomplish. I know it has value. I know it's going to benefit people. I see all the good signs. There's ticks all over this objective, this vision. But many people say to you, "Oh, hey, Jackie, I know it's impossible. It just hasn't been done." So, but I mean, that's someone a lot of us have people like that around us who are very quick to dismiss.
Yeah.
So there should be criteria around what these members of this village should show. So maybe share a couple of those with us in terms of what those criteria are that helps us to weed these out.
Yeah, that's really very interesting question actually, because the village we're talking about are people. Let's say most of the time people who are coming together to help you to achieve, your dreams. And we have to remember that if the village is a set of people, you are the first inhabitant of this village. You are the first one. So you are in the center of this village. Everything else that's gonna come or not come, it doesn't matter because you already set the village. So for me, what I've seen, in my experience at least, you will never be successful, by the way, most of the time, if people around you or who are in a position of making things happen for you are not opening doors, or they don't want to support your ideas. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. But still, for me, I am a village. That's how I set my life. The reason is I don't want it to be disappointed and then abandon my dreams to begin with. So every time I have a dream and I wanted to pursue this dream, I make sure that at least 70% of this dream, I can do it. I can do that myself.
Okay.
Let's say I'm in a village where I am all alone. I'm the only one person to do that. And exactly what you were saying, if I start something, it's because it has to be done. So the majority of the time, effort has to come from me. So I count more on me than the other people. I can bring people in once I have established my own idea, a project.
So it's a timing thing. The village is based on timing. So you need to have made some sensible amount of progress.
Exactly. Because a dream is personal. Your dream is yours. No one will be able to dream like you. Look, when you are sleeping, you have your dreams. I'm quite sure no one is having the same dream as you. So it's exactly the same thing. It's your dream. You are the only one who understands this dream. You start by understanding that. Because otherwise, you have an idea, you go out there, tell to everybody, hey, come on, this is the idea, no one cares. It's your idea. Until people can see that, oh, by the way, this idea is good. And this is not something, for me or you. Look at even all successful people out there, big business people. They will tell you the same thing. They started like Apple, for example, in their, garage. No one believes them until they can show that there is something. So there is a serious, that's like entrepreneurship, innovation. A big share in your dreams. It's you. You dream, and then you try to entertain your dream. Now, I'm going to give you an example where you are completely disappointed because, so I had this idea, for example, to put together a mental health application with students. So you go out there, You have an idea, you have people who are going to work on the project, you have money, go out there and find the money. But the people who are just going to check and say, okay, let's go, they will say no. You have money, you have an idea, you have people, everything is there. Someone will just say no, and there will be no. There will be no project. So you have to keep this also in mind when we talk about the village. In this time, your village, there's someone who has the key to open the village, just close the village. And that's very, very important. Why I'm bringing this, that's why I'm telling you why I have like 100 projects at the same time. Because if you close this project, and I'm sure that there is no way for me to get out there, I'm not going to waste my time with you. I have another project. So most of the time, those are the strategies you will learn on the way, on your journey. Yes, there are sometimes the village is closed. No one is coming. But that's meaning that that's the end of the world or that's the end of your dreams? No. That's why I was talking about innovation and creativity. You close this door. I try to open it, of course. But guess what? I can do mental health app. I can develop another app. I can do project management. I can do so many things. So you close this. I will come back to you because I'm busy doing something else. That's my village.
I mean, fantastic. So I've taken away two things. You know, so absolutely we need a village, but we need to be mindful of when we bring them in to our vision, right? And based on your personal experience, you found that you need to have a certain breadth of skills by yourself, you know, before you can even begin to consider bringing people in. And the other thing you said, which was also very interesting to me, was as you rounded up now and you were saying that you were speaking about, I forget now, but I think you wanted to say something. I saw you kind of speaking into your microphone, so yeah, go ahead.
I was just smiling because again, we're totally different. When you asked about village, you know, and maybe this is because you're like this starting and end point, like you're starting with your dream or your vision. My experience has been kind of the reverse. I've had to go in search of mine. I didn't have it to start with. And maybe it's also just a personality thing too. But for me, I've always needed and had a kind of an advisory council, you know, like a core group of people who I trusted, who I knew loved me, who saw me for who I really was authentically. And
so are you saying that they started your vision with
yeah,
you versus you already having made headway?
Yes.
And then bringing them in?
Yes. They, you know, my tribe, my village, was the one who actually sort of mentored me through it. Like, in lots of ways, I was the last one to figure it out. Like, I bet I could name about 10 people in my life who've kind of been there through the many different chapters that I kind of went through, and always kind of knew that I would end up in this place, you know? It took me a lot longer to figure it out. And so for me personally, my village got me to where I am. So it's a slightly different.
I mean, we're saying that there's no one size fits all, right?
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And which is why we do try to bring in people who have diverse backgrounds, just so people can know that it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be this way and only this way.
Yeah.
There's multiple ways to still get to that end point of something, and it doesn't change what the outcome is. It's still a fantastic outcome. We just have different ways of arriving there, right?
Yeah, and I think it depends on who you are, your experiences, you know, what happened to you, where you started from, like you lost a parent
Sometimes
early.
Experiences,
you
right?
know, that, you know, you even just like where you come from, and the history of where you've come from, your family life. You know, my husband and I are like total opposites, and we had very different upbringings, and he's an introverted engineer and I'm an extroverted empaths. So it's just like, I think, like you said, one size doesn't fit all, and it really has to be this work at figuring out who you are, what works for you, and not being afraid to kind of question it.
Absolutely. I mean, I do hear you both. I want to just add a little bit of something to Dr. Jacqueline's, because, many times the route we eventually end up taking is determined by the experience we've had leading up to there. You will find that many people may choose either of these things because of the kind of life they've lived. If you've lived a life where people have always held your hand and lifted you versus, being the exact opposite, then that suits you perfectly.
Yeah, and that was my experience.
Yeah, and then if you've lived a different life where you've been surrounded by those who keep telling you, oh, hey, you know what, this will not work. In fact, you will not find anyone who can join hands with you on this project because it's impossible. So then that will make you want to keep those ideas close to your chest and not constantly receive discouragement, and you're killing what could definitely be something good, right?
Totally.
So, absolutely. I have another question. So one thing you mentioned, Ashley, as you were speaking, is how purpose changes. This is newish to me. As far as I know, we all have an idea of what we are born to do. So it might take some people a while to get there, but when they find that one thing, as far as they're concerned, I've found what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So for you to say that there's times when this thing that we feel is lifelong, changes, but, and then if I think about your own encounter, your own story, where you say to us that, although you've worked in myriad places, but you've been pretty much doing the same thing. So I wonder, like how are we able to marry these two things, or how did you come about this, other statement where you say it changes, even when we see that yours hasn't really quite changed.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing, that even for myself looking back, right? I mean, this gave me the opportunity to look back and kind of reflect and go, oh, I've always kind of done the same things, and it's all connected and tied together. And looking back, it seems obvious, and it also seems like I did it, like I meant to do it, which I honestly wish I could say, but I really didn't. But I also think it's important, for me, I never had one passion or one clear purpose. So mine was a bit more fluid. But even for those individuals who I know had a very direct and specific passion, and they felt it was also their purpose, the challenge with that in life I have seen is that you are not ultimately in control. And for example, I have a good friend who her passion and purpose was to be a surgeon. She's an OBGYN, and then she was diagnosed with a condition that she can no longer use her hands in a way that will allow her to perform surgery. Or even my dad, who was passionate about flying. He was a pilot forever, and he's lost his vision. These things are out of our control. Just because we've lost the ability to do that one thing we thought was our purpose and passion doesn't mean we all of a sudden become purposeless. Because life is full of opportunities to fall in love with new passions and find new purposes in different ways. And I think for me, that's been my experiences. I have found different passions and purpose. Although there's themes, there's definitely themes, I feel a sense of freedom in the fact that I am not a this or that. I'm a generalist who, I know now I could find purpose in any role,
I mean, that's excellent. So, thanks, Ashley. That clears that up. I have no questions there, so that's fantastic. I have a quick question for you, Dr. Jacqueline, and we'll hear if anyone has a question. One of the things I keep hearing you say is that there's many things you're working on at any one time. So like you're full of purpose, you're full of passion, all these different projects. So how do you know when you can let go of something? Because you said that sometimes there's things that happen and then you realize that you can't really follow through on that one and then you let it go and refocus. So what are those things that are pointers that there's some kind of order or prioritization that even takes place with our purpose or our passion?
That's very good, because the key here is reprioritization. Effectively, you do. Like now, right now, I'm teaching. I'm going to teach 3 courses. I'm sitting on the board of governors. I'm sitting on another advisory committee for something completely different. I'm sitting on another board where I'm also serving as a secretary, so you're doing almost everything for the board. I'm chairing this committee for EDI. So when you look at all those things that I'm doing, they're completely different. And I can really switch from one thing. I have my office at home. I have like two screens, big ones. So when you look at, there's so many opened documents, but also windows. And I can switch from one to the other. Now, this is something I've built myself since I was young. I can do many things. That's just, let's say, how I am. But it's very important to know what is the priority in all these projects I'm doing. For me, all of them are my priorities. All of them, so I can work on anything. The reason why I'm doing all these things, when I give you actually my secret, it's about learning. Learning. Every time there is something I can learn in a project, it's becoming my priority. And this moment, I need really, really learning process. I need everything I can find, put my hands on. Learning in terms of leadership. This is a different country, different culture for me. There is nowhere I could have learned how leadership is done here in Canada than being on the board of governors. So you're sitting with many CEOs, those people who really are on the top. When you come in the room, sometimes I come, I'm like, I should go back probably, because I don't think really I belong in this place.
Imposter syndrome.
But I'm like, no, push yourself, go back, sit there, because I have to learn. And every time I approach a project as a learning, it's no longer working. It's no longer too much of, no, it's becoming for me, I'm learning something. And here in Canada, I had to redo the whole thing. Because where I come from...
If I can interrupt you, Dr. Jacqueline, can you break down that word? Because you're using running in a way that I'm constantly having to reinterpret as you make more statements, right? So to me, it means when you're able to really kind of handle a project in its entirety, right? Or that you can already see progress, So what exactly does it mean in terms of the way you're in the concept of how you're using it?
Running, you mean? For me, the projects, I have so many projects. Again, really, there are really many. And many of them, like now, I'm not talking even about them. I have a big project I love, which is completely out of my professional. I do gardening. You've got to see my garden. It's really beautiful. And I started just from scratch because we bought a new house and there was nothing. So again, I'm going to just show you how I do my things to understand, to learn. Everything I do is about learning. And if I'm going to really do a project, as you said, from the beginning, I have an idea, bring it to the maturity, I will do that. Because it's again about learning. But again, people can ask you how you do that. In a project, there is, sometimes you need to know legal things, you need to have people who write, they're completely different from, you have a software development. I can do software development, that's my background. So there are so many things you have to do. For me, if I can learn every single thing, I would do that. And again, my purpose is here to learn to learn again. Some people can say, okay, so that's too much of work. It's not. For me, I have never seen myself like too much work. Sometimes I go to bed at 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh, I remember just because I saw it on my computer. But again, because there is something I'm learning in this process. So I'm not telling to everybody to start having 100 projects. It's not a good idea, by the way. It's not a good idea unless you have a control on this project, and sometimes if you have deadlines, and make sure that you are going to perform well, because the problem here is you can launch 100 projects and you don't succeed. As you were saying, there is something very important you actually said. Every time you are given an opportunity, make sure that you show your best. Again, because you don't know who is watching and what is happening. Now, I'm going to be very specific. Much more if you are a black something, black man or woman. If you are given anything like that, make sure that you are going to be the best. Okay? Because you don't have so many opportunities. But it does go for women, for everybody, everybody. Make sure that you do that. And that's why I'm not going to tell you to start to have 100 projects. I didn't start my life with 100 projects. Okay? I just learned how to be to the best I can when managing many projects.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. Alia, I know you have a question. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can, and then whoever is directed to will repeat the question, so, yeah.
My question was around humility, because both of you brought it up in your stories and what you shared. And what I wondered is, it seems like in this society that we live in here in Canada, North America, that humility is not valued. We always have to talk about all our accolades, nominate ourselves for awards. So how do you keep doing what you want to do and love doing it and stay humble?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's interesting because I was raised in a family where like what was most important was humility. So my mom and dad, like if I ever did something really, really well and I got too boastful, they'd be like, "Now be humble, you know, like don't brag." Whereas my next door neighbor's family was very like, "Be proud of yourself and go and promote," and you know like, and actually my sister and I talk about this all the time because we think like, would we have been more successful if we were told to like go and be a little bit more, you know, of a bragger, like, you know, like just to be more self-promoting and a little more confident and to be honest, like I haven't got it all figured out, but I think it's just about being authentic. I don't think there's anything wrong with being super proud of who you are and also not being afraid to be recognized for your achievements. I was taught to kind of like if somebody gives you a compliment, you deflect, you know, like, "Oh, you look great." "Oh, no, you know," or if, you know, if you're celebrated, you kind of, you could deflect. But I think over time, I'm struggling and continue to strive for a balance. I think, especially for women, we need to teach our daughters and sisters and friends to be proud of who they are, to be celebrated, to feel confident in being celebrated and complimented and promoted, all that stuff. And yet the humility piece is so, I think actually a beautiful piece about being a woman. I think there's something really amazing about a woman's ability to be naturally humble. I mean, for heaven's sakes, like, we're all here because of a woman. And you know, this struck me, this is a little bit long-winded, but it struck me when I was like pregnant and, you know, and I had a baby and you go through this and you come out the other end and you're like, nobody told me it was going to be that hard. You know, like women don't make a big deal about stuff they go through because they just go through it and it's just, this is life. And so now we have this like time and space where women are like, yeah, look at us, we're amazing. So I think there's like a balance, you know, you have to be authentic and true to yourself. But I think there's a difference between like humility and confidence. Like you can be confidently humble. And I think it's just about posture. And I also think it's really about if you can't connect with somebody, if your posture to the world around you is blocking you from connection, then you have a problem with humility, right? Like I love what you were saying, like you're coming to my event, I want to talk to you, like you're still clearly confident, but open. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Like, look, I'm here. I've worked my butt off to get here, and let's talk about it. And I want to help you.
I know this is valuable, so come and seize the opportunity versus, you know, anything that would have rubbed people the wrong way. But you know, we all felt positive. We even kind of applauded, you know, your offer of having people come, you know, participate in what you've put together, right?
Well, and there's power in that confidence too, I think.
Yeah, because you're sure of the value you're bringing to people in a way that people can recognize and also be endeared to want to come and be a part of what you're doing. So I do hear you loud and clear that I feel like that question is really an issue of, fantastic question, first of all. And it's a response that has to do with just where you're positioning yourself on the scale, on that achievement scale, how you want to show it off. There's people who have, nominated. We had someone here come here, a young lady, Eno Eka, who is completely relatable, you know, but she's so well nominated, is literally 20-something years old and has done A to Z, you know, and is still really accomplishing things. Yesterday I was informed that the cost she now offers is now in 4 digits per person, you know, so in 5 years, she has built a business from nothing. But like when you see her, she's completely you don't assume anything. And she speaks like a little girl. You know, like, so she's so sweet. Still, you know, every once in a while you hear her say, oh, hey, Chika, vote for me because, you know, I've done this, I've done that. But because you see the value in what she's doing, you don't mind that she's even wanting to put herself out there to be the recipient of these awards, right? In a way that you almost want to say, you know what, you actually deserve it. I should put you forward a little bit more, right? So I also have been privy to conversations where I've heard people say, you know, I'm doing such good work, I need to be celebrated. And they've nominated themselves and they've won the award. You know, so it wasn't because people recognized that they deserved the award, because maybe it had to do with their character and the way they treated people. Maybe they had a wrong kind of leadership. So people didn't think that they should be nominated or celebrated because they weren't acting right. But still, the work they're doing is excellent. You know, so there's all these different variables, honestly, Ali, answering your question, that we can't quite say this is it or this is that. But these are scenarios where it can serve as a pointer in how we need to kind of position ourselves, you know, where you can maintain humility and still be celebrated as a woman, right? Or as an individual, in fact. Yeah, Jacqueline, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The other thing is, like for me, for example, I've lived now in so many countries, and everywhere I've lived, it's kind of, it left something in me. So I have many cultures conflicting in me. For example, people who are believers or who go to church, you know something very important in the Bible. Jesus has said, you know, make sure that whenever your right hand does something, the left hand should never know. And there are people who live this life. So even when you do something good, you don't want anyone to know. So you need to keep your humility, you be humble. You never say something. So there is something I've learned. That's your culture. But when you leave one culture to go into another culture, they have a completely different expectations or interpretation of what is humility. I have something I always, again, I go back to your state of mind. You make everything around it. That's why I was talking about being a center of your own village. Again, I am the one who has a problem actually with humility because I don't understand the interpretation in this new culture. Something that used to be my strength, because in many cultures, I told you, they can recognize when you are being humble. But in this culture, you have to go out there and talk about it.
Put yourself
It's
out there.
becoming
Yeah.
a weakness, actually. So there's something very important when you take things in your mind. You say, I like to tell to my mind when I see something I don't understand or I don't want to see. Rewire. You are wired, all of us. Rewire. Go back to, we need to think this thing through. What do you call humility here? Now, there is a problem. The reason why I can switch from being, not talking about your qualifications, most of the time I don't do, into really talking about my qualification and the things I've done, depending on my audience. Because most of the time, promotions will pass by. No one is giving you nothing. Imagine you have a project that needed to be funded. I don't know, we're talking about 100,000, whatever it is. And then you go there with your, I don't know, maybe we'll work or we'll never work. Seriously, no one is giving you money. No one. And you will be surprised to see people who are coming, talking about the things they have never seen in their lives, but they are confident. They know that, everybody's going to give them money. And the village we're talking about, everybody will come because they think there's a person here, things are going on. But I needed to rewire my brain to say, hey, you know what, you are no longer in these countries where they like humble people. When here they see you're humble, they think you are stupid. Because they are like, if you really have done things, you could be able to talk about those things. If you are not talking about them, it's because you've done nothing in your life. Now, if I'm in a position of sitting with other people, talking about my accomplishment, for an audience that likes to hear about the things you've done, I don't even feel bad. It's not like I'm betraying my culture, no. I am just switching because I live in a different culture. And that's also what we call flexibility. Be flexible yourself. You don't need to be always humble if in this country they don't think you are being...
Yeah, not even, country might even be a far cry. If the context
Yeah.
allows you to speak up. If, for instance, you're in a place and they say, is there anyone here who knows how to do this, who is familiar with doing this, who owns a business that offers this service? You will do yourself a disservice to be quiet. So there are contexts that call for you to publicize yourself.
Yeah.
And you should seize those. So even at that point, humility won't pay because you're literally shortchanging yourself of some kind of value, right? Mm-hmm. So there's times when you need to, for instance, put some things aside. And because the issue, many of the people who tend to talk a lot about their accomplishments is that they don't stop talking about them to learn new things. Mm-hmm. So they're so overwhelmed with how far they've come, mm-hmm. that they feel like they've gotten to a pinnacle and then everybody else is now, subservient or lower than they are. And that's where problem creeps in because now you feel like you can't learn anymore. You're now at the top of it, so there's nowhere else. So I think that has to do, at that point would be a character issue, so we can't say everybody should know how to handle these things because we all have, again, it's one of the points you've spoken about endlessly this evening is, people's backgrounds, where they're coming from. For instance, Ashley mentions her upbringing where humility is critical, and Jacqueline also speaks about a different country, different context, where the order of the day is humility. People don't go around bragging about what they've done, but we're in a society that allows you to put your name forward for awards. Yeah. You nominate yourself for all these things. I was telling Ashley and Jacqueline a few minutes ago that I received a call from someone saying to me, oh, hey, Chika, and there's an award coming up. I feel like you're so well suited to the award. Nominate yourself. And I had to decline. I said, I'm so sorry, I can't do that. You know, I would rather people find value in something I'm doing versus having to put my name up. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's any final words from any other question as we wrap up tonight? We have like literally 10 minutes left. So any final words, Ashley? Any final words, Jacqueline? I mean, like 1 minute each, you know, and then so that we don't stay over time.
Then it'll just be gratitude. Thank you for having me and inviting me, and thank you for coming, each of you. It's not lost on me that it's a Saturday night in the summer on a beautiful evening, and you've chosen to come here of all places. So I just gratitude. Thank you for the conversation. It's been a pleasure meeting you as well, and this is why we do these things right now, because I know I have a couple of new friends and more great conversations to come. So thank you.
Thanks, Ash. Dr. Jacqueline?
Yeah, thank you so much. The same. It was a real pleasure meeting you. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I just wanted to say that we may be different background, but we share something, humanity, okay? At the end of the day, we're just in this journey together, life. It's beautiful, you know, challenges or difficulties, anything, plus success. Enjoy life. Come back to thinking, I'm not alone. I talked about this village, but there is a humanity. We are part of this. And make sure that you leave something in this world or anywhere you are going. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Jacqueline. Can we put our hands together for Ashley and Dr. Jacqueline? So as our custom, we wouldn't let you go without a little token from us so that you can remember us. We want you to keep coming back. We want you to, keep being accessible for our community. And we also want to say thank you for the work you're doing as well in your own different circles. You know, it's an absolute privilege that people like yourself who are very occupied with 10,000 different things can also come here on a day like today when you should be taking time to rest, you know. So we're very mindful of that, which is why we don't want you to go empty-handed. So this is both to remember us, keep coming back, and also to say thank you for what you're doing and for also coming to drop all these nuggets of wisdom. We appreciate you, and any community who continues to, give women opportunities to speak is really headed in the right direction. You know, there's what women can do that, men are definitely lacking. You know, we do things exceptionally well, and we always add on top of that compassion and empathy. So thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. Thank you, Ashley. Can we put our hands together for these wonderful women? Catherine, so we want to present you some gifts to say thank you. This is for you, Dr. Jacqueline.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is for you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our night. Thank you all for coming out. See you next month.
Thank you so much.